is being recorded.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another quick class. This particular one, we could never decide. We were like, is it latte lovers? Is it coffee lovers? Not sure, but it's quite a good one. Works with a bit of shading and things like that. So you can create sort of 3D and reflections with your contrast. So obviously you're very welcome to do this in whatever colours you like. What I found with the previous drawing sessions is because my light shading doesn't really show up, what I do is I work in different colours. So when I work in orange, that's where you do light shading. When I work in red, that's where you do medium shading. And when I work in brown, that's where you do your darker areas. And it just seems to make it translate a little bit better onto the camera and everything so that you know what's happening. So yeah, so what will happen is, I'll just recap that. So where I draw in orange, that's where you do light pencil shading. Where I draw in red, that's where you do kind of medium depth. And where I do brown, that's your darker areas. So these areas here, where you've got a really strong contrast, that's the areas I'm going to be doing in brown. My kind of guidelines I'll be doing in orange, a little bit of shading down here, and my sort of mid-tones I'll be doing in red. So you will have to bear with me. I have to sit at a very strange angle to do this. So mine might end up being a little bit crooked or wonky. If it does, do shout at me, because of the angle I'm sitting at, it looks like it's okay. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find roughly the middle of my canvas or paper. This is drawing, not painting. So, and what I want to do then is basically I'm going to find about halfway up and put myself another little guideline. So this is really pale like guidelines for you. This is just us kind of proportioning things out. So basically that's going to be the bottom of our cup here. So a little bit of kind of maths involved. And what we want to do is our circles that our cup is made up of is we're going to, so this part here is roughly the same as like 3 of those make our cup up. So what we want to do, we've got one here, so that sits sort of just in the middle, and one here. So our cup is going to sit up. So for the lady who's just joined me, hi Tammy, what I'm doing to show easier on the camera is where you do your light shading, I'm going to work in orange. Where you do your medium depth shading, I'm going to work in red, and your dark areas, I'm working in brown. Just so it shows up a little bit easier, makes a bit more sense on the camera. I've divided my paper in half and then in quarter, and I'm going to start off by putting in a bit of a semicircle that's going to go from my halfway line down to my quarter line. We then want to put an oval on top, and as I said, this here, our oval, we have roughly 3 of those stacked. So what we want to do is kind of really lightly sketch in our oval, and then we want to go 1, 2, and that works about right. So I can, so you're still doing this in your light sketch like that. Okay, so if all okay, give me a little thumbs up. I know you can't really chat on these lunchtime sessions. Awesome. And then what we want to do is put in our saucer. So our saucer, we've got 1, 2, 3 is going to sit. So we've got our same oval. So if it helps you, pop in. One of my cats is meowing because I've locked them out. So we're going to put in the same oval here. So we know we're roughly into thirds. You can put all 3 in if it helps you. So you know that you're kind of stacked. Guidelines, they don't matter. They're there. When I do my painting classes, I always say, we go wrong with these, so we go right later. Okay, keeping with our pale marks, our saucer is split. So we've got the inside and the outside. It's also a little bit wider. So I want to widen out. And you want it to be roughly like a kind of similar sort of angle. If this was thin, then this would be thin because of the angle. Because this is quite fat, we want this to be quite fat as well. So go wider. You can use your fingers to make sure. We're going to go up behind our saucer. And then we want to put, if this area is fat, this area will be thin. If this area is thin, that area will be fatter. So there's a little bit hovering at the moment, and that's because our cup needs a little bit of a kind of stand underneath. And then also our saucer will have a little kind of indentation for our cup to stand in. Okay, everyone all right? Fantastic. So we got a couple more bits to do with our light pencil strokes. So we obviously need a handle. So I want my handle to sit kind of between this area and this area. So if I put these lines out, hopefully those are straight. Hi, we're kind of 10 minutes into this already. So these are obviously quite fast paced, these sessions. So if you would rather, you can, I'll be sending the recording out of the session if you would like, and you can see right from the beginning if that's a bit more helpful. So our handle also needs to come onto our cup. It's not sticking directly out on the side, it's slightly turned towards us. So if you come in a little bit, we're going to do a second curved line that's going to follow the curve of the cup on the outside, and on this we're going to pop 2 little ovals, and our handle is going to be attached to those. So you can do whatever shape of handle you like. You can kind of have ones that are more sweeping. You can have ones that are more sort of pointed. Totally up to you. You can do those kind of triangular ones. It's up to you. But what we've done is we've just, rather than have it just sitting flat on the side, we've just brought it around a little bit. We then need to put some coffee in our cup. So again, as we repeated this curve on the right hand side, we're going to repeat this curve on the inside of our cup up here, like that. And then we've got all our lovely steam coming up off of our cup. So again, these are with our really pale strokes to start off with. We can do some hearts, we can do some wisps of smoke or steam. So some nice kind of wavy lines, some little curls. I like to do ones that go up like that. So add some more hearts in. And you can add more later, but what we want to do is leave this area in a minute where our hearts are going to be sort of the paler where it hits the coffee. So that's why we put those in later. Right, so that's roughly our cup planned out. I'm going to, because it's sort of floating on space, in space a little bit, I'm just going to very lightly put in a little bit of shadow, and then I will come back. So that's our pale areas done. And now what we can do, we're all planned, we can actually start to put in our mid-tones. So I personally with this one started off by doing my steam and then started to work my cup around it. So I'm going to go over, so where I'm doing red, this is going to be your sort of darker. You're now applying a bit of pressure. You might go from like a H pencil to a HB or something like that. And you can start to put in and also correct and add any bits that you want to with your steam and your hearts. So this is an abstract painting. I keep saying painting because I was doing a paint class last night. This is an abstract drawing, so you don't have to be perfect at all. That is me starting to get my steam in. I might put some others. I might come back and put some darker bits in as well. I'm then going to start to work my way down. So I want although I want my coffee to be darker, I also want to have a little bit of kind of some mid-tones in. So I'm going to shade in between, leaving like a little white halo around my steam. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm just colouring that in, leaving a gap. And then if I swap over, so you can see what I mean, my darker areas would be over here. So you can see in the contrast of the colours that I'm doing, where the dark area, so that's where you really apply your pressure or you use your darker pencil. And although I've got mine looks a bit like molten lava, you should have a nice kind of grey tone. Really go for the dark areas, particularly down here on the left-hand side. Everyone okay? So I've got my very big cup of coffee as well that I'm drinking with this. Not quite as hot and steamy though. Once you've done that, give me a little thumbs up. Awesome. Everyone else okay? Fantastic. I will start. So I'm going to go back to my red, so my mid-tone kind of colours, not pressing down too hard. And I want to start to now draw in the top of my cup. So just like we did with the shading around here, I'm leaving that halo around my steam. So got a nice curve to the back of my cup. I can come round, join that up. I can pin some of my cup. I know I'm going to be going over some of this with my darker, really darker colour in a bit. I can put in the base of my cup, and I've also can put in the groove in the saucer where my cup sits. I'm then going to pop in my saucer. So it might help you, and which is absolutely fine if you want to, if you put yours to a point. So this stops you kind of being tempted to do that, like where it goes like that. We want this to kind of narrow off. So you could cross it like that and then curve it to get yourself a nice kind of curved line there. And then with your saucer, like that. So as I was saying, because of the angles on this, if this bit is what is wide, this bit would be narrow because you don't see a lot of the saucer curving up. If you've gone quite narrow with that bit, put a wider bit because your angle would be lower, and your angle would be lower, so you would see more underneath. And then, yeah, I am gonna put a little bit more dark shadow underneath, kind of grounding it. So we've obviously got our dark coffee in here, and now we need to darken some of the cup. So if you have a look at this original over here, our dark of our coffee actually comes up the side of the cup here. That's not because there's coffee up there. We're not thinking about this in colours, we're thinking about this in shades. So this bit, the light would be coming from over here, so this bit inside the cup would be in shadow, but this side would be light. So with that in mind, you can again, so I'm going to start off with my red, and then, so that's my mid kind of like grey tone, and then I might come and go over it again. Doesn't matter if we lose this bit of coffee. The rest of this cup is giving us the information to know that we don't, what's going on, without us needing to be able to see that. And then I'm going to use some of my mid-tone, bring it down, keeping that little halo. And I'm fading it as I go from left to right. I'm getting a little bit lighter each time. When I come round to this side, to be honest, my shading's going to be so light that you barely see it. So I'm going to use my orange. So at the moment, with that just by itself, it's not making a lot of huge amount of sense, but the more info you add, the more sense you make. I'm going to give my red another little sharpen. And I'm going to look at my handle. So I'm going to just roughly sketch it in. So yeah, handles can be all different shapes. You can really go sort of to town with this and do whatever you want, but I'm going to kind of keep mine roughly similar to my original. And what happens is they follow, they're still following the curve of the cup. So the underneath particularly, this is much more rounded. So we want to have a really nice following the curve kind of bit of clay where it is touching our coffee cup. So once you've done that, have a look. You might, depending on how you've drawn it, you might have just like a little tiny bit of coffee cup showing. You might have lost it altogether. So go along with your guide sketch, follow it, and just then decide whether you need to put a bit of something in there. So not only have we got a round object that we've got to create shading in, it's also a bit reflective just to make it even more difficult for us. And so what we want to do is have quite strong contrasts. So if you want things to be matte, you would have a very soft kind of subtle change in contrast. If you want things to be shiny, you have a very strong change in contrast between the light areas and the dark areas. So yeah, you really kind of, that's something, this is kind of in the middle, it's not mirrory, but there's a definite shine to it. So we've got this lighter area right here in the middle. So I'm gonna keep with my, go back to my, this is my light strokes, and I'm gonna basically create, so you're gonna paint, draw this really lightly there. And all of the rest, either side, we're gonna fill that with shading, and we're gonna get darker as we go outwards. So we're going to have something else going on down here at the bottom, but at the moment, leave this bit at the bottom and we're going to come back to it. We're just going to start to shade. So this is really light. And as you work your way out, you're going to start to, about halfway through, you start to get a little bit darker. And then when you get right out to the sides, you're just like we have here, you're going to go dark, really dark. You can go right along the edge of your cup. Like that. So you go pale, pale, like very palest you can do, where you're barely touching the paper, getting a little bit heavier, a bit heavier, a bit heavier, until you're really dark out towards the sides. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So barely even touching the paper, leaving this bit where the saucer is down here blank for now. About halfway through, I start to kind of add a bit more pressure. So I'm starting to get a kind of mid-grey at this point. Even though this is a white cup, there's still lots of different shades in it. Leaving the handle at the moment. And then right when I get to the very outside, this is my really dark, so you don't want solid bands like I've got, you want it to be sort of gradually getting darker with your grey pencil. Once you've done that, give me a little thumbs up. Also, so while the recording is on this site, if you're struggling with anything, you want me to have a look, you can, whip your camera on and hold it up to the screen, and I can see you without you being on the camera. So, or you can wait and I'll have a look at the end once we finish the recording. Give me another little thumbs up when you're ready to move on. When you're doing any kind of drawing or painting, what you do is you want to get blocks, particularly something that's very contrasting and monotone. You want to get kind of blocks of like dark areas, light areas, mid-tone areas in. Have a look at all of it. Make sure that you haven't gone sort of like too dark in some areas or too light in others, while you've still got a chance to kind of sort it out and go darker and use a rubber and lighten things up. And then once you've got your areas blocked in, you can be a much more kind of have a judge of, oh, actually the coffee needs to go darker, or this bit I need to kind of shade it a little bit more, I need to make the whole of this grey, or something like that. You can have a much better judge with that than you can if you go, okay, I'm going to do all of the shading on the coffee, then I'm going to do all of the shading on the cup, then I'm going to, because it's hard to come back from that. If you've kind of start down a path up here and then realize later on that you've gone too heavy too soon, it can be really soul destroying. So it's a really good idea to just get things blocked together, because they react differently when they're together and when they're next to each other. So I'm going to, while you guys are doing that, or if you guys have finished, I'm going to work on the handle. The handle's quite easy. Basically what we want to do is, the main core of it is lighter in the middle and darker, working darker as you go. It's where we get to sort of just down here is where it starts to sort of change a little bit. So our handle's quite small. We're going to have quite a strong contrast on it. So I am going to start off with pretty much a middle tone shade in the bit where it joins the cup. I might come in, put a little bit of shadow around the bottom, also a little bit around the top. I'm not going to put a big bold outline all the way around it because I don't want that. It's the contrast that's doing the work, not the outline. Okay, switching back to my red, I'm going to have a middle kind of tone, working above and below on the handle. I'm going to go around like this, keeping this white core around the middle, through the middle, should I say, sorry. And so you might do all of this and then look at the hand and go, oh, that's too contrasty, and you might need to shade in a little bit of it, a bit lighter. But again, get your blocks in and then you can make that decision. And then I've got some areas that need a bit more shadow. So I'm going to step in slightly from the outside line, and I'm going to put in a bit of shadow, really dark shadow contrasting underneath there. This is the shadow of our cup reflecting on the handle. And then down here where the cup is, I'll have a bit of contrast where the foot is. I'm going to then come in and put in a little bit of contrast. So just stepped in a little bit. And then this area under the handle on our saucer is quite dark. So I don't want to kind of do a thick black line under there. I want there to be a lighter bit, and then I'm going to have the really dark bit of my saucer. Okay. Fantastic. Tammy, okay? I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm going to crack on and get this saucer and the rest of our shadows done. So we have a lot of reflection going on in this bit. There's bits of light that are kind of bouncing off of different things. Fantastic. Thank you, Tammy. So what I'm going to do is first of all put in my shadow, and so yes, this is the opposite way to how we've done the rest of it, but it gives you a really good kind of basis to work out what's going where, because this bit is a bit more complicated. So this area of our cup, where it sits in the groove, is really dark. So that's, we're going to darken that right down. And also either sides of the foot of our cup. You can even thicken it up a little bit on the right hand side. And then you want a sort of dark mid-tone in this middle section here. So that's really contrasting compared to the rest of it, but on a white cup this would still be, even though it would be grey not black, it would still be a lot darker. It's like we've turned the contrast right up. So we've then got this dark kind of shadow happening. So it's curved, it's the reflection of the shadow off of our saucer. So I'm gonna pop in this curve, and around that and above it, I am going to pop in a sort of mid grey shading. And underneath it is just a little tiny bit. You can even leave that white if you want. So we've got the shadow on our saucer. We can do the underneath next because that's quite simple. So we've got all this light bouncing around, and bizarrely the light, if we've got a light, say this is on a light tablecloth, the light would be hitting this and bouncing back up. So actually, as much as you would think the shadow would be on the underneath of our saucer, it's not. That's actually one of the lightest places on our drawing. So I'm going to put in a little light shading on the left and the right hand side, and I'm going to leave this middle section here like really pale. You can, if you need to, pop in a little bit of mid shading on either side, but you really don't want a lot there. You could, if you really want to and really want to get the last little bit of shadow, you would have, the only real shadow would be there. Just this tiny bit in the middle underneath where we've created that little bit of shadow. And then what we're left with is our saucer. So this again is the only bit that kind of, like the cup, you've got this light bouncing around. So to make this make sense, this area here is light. We've got the reflection of the cup coming down, and you've got a bit of a reflection kind of in under the handle. So I'm going to do the reflection under the cup to start off with. Parts of this are actually quite dark because we've got the dark areas of our cup reflecting. So I'm going to go from behind because we can see under our cup, and I'm going to, so this is quite a dark line, and I'm going to shade that in. So these are the reflection of these dark sides underneath. And then I'm going to go mid-tone. So this is my mid-grey. And I'm going to come really quite far in with it. And then my lighter area is in the middle because this is the reflection of this light area here. It's still grey, but it's lighter. This area to the left-hand side is going to be pale and is going to just fade away to white before we get to the reflection. And then on the right-hand side, we've got this dark contrast bit where the actual direct light with no reflections is hitting and casting a shadow behind. So I would start off with a sort of mid tone of your pencil, and then just underneath where our handle is, we're going to go really dark. So I've not created a big thick line, and by me leaving that space between my shadow and the outer edge of my more grey tone of my handle, that handle really pops out now with the reflections and the highlights on it, rather than I've just got a big heavy outline on it. And then finally we've got this little shaded bit here. So again, I can use my mid-tones, and that's just got a slight curve, and it's going to fade away into nothing. Have a look. If any bits don't make sense, so there's not really enough contrast there, I can add a little darker bit of contrast. This is what I was saying about, you know, you don't work on one bit, work in your blocking it in, and then go back and you can go, okay, actually I can make my coffee darker. Whereas if I've gone dark right from the beginning, I've taken that option away from myself. I can, you know, if I want to put in some more sketchy bits in some of my smoke, I can do. I can add more sort of pale wispy bits if I want to. I can, you know, your eraser is a tool as well. If you want to lighten stuff up, don't be afraid to use it and take a bit of kind of something off if you need to. I've got coloured pencils obviously, so I can't, but so yeah. And then once you've done it, you know, I always say this, I always date it because it's good to see how you progress and see what year you did that, and see, you know, that you are improving, that you are getting better. So yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed a little cup of coffee with me with this session. So managed to actually whip through and do this one on time, which is awesome. While I think of it, if you've enjoyed this session, this recording, next week's quick class is this little beauty, which I promise you is not as scary as it looks. And particularly if you've done the coffee cup, pardon me, and you've got used to actually understanding that you have light areas and dark areas, and you don't have to always give all of the information. So like her tail here. We can't see that there's scales there, but our brain's going to fill in the blanks and tell us that it is. So that's next week. So hopefully I will see you for that one. And I'm going to go to my live drawers and see how they got on. So bye.